Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and in this video, which is actually part of a multiple blog series that I'm putting together, is how I migrated my Access web app to PowerApps. Now, as some of you may know, that there is a little bit of an urgency to this because it has officially been announced by Microsoft, and this article was written by Chris McNulty, that Access web app is getting Access web apps is getting deprecated in SharePoint. So that's something we all know about. But it has officially been announced that, as Microsoft states it, that we no longer recommend Access Web Apps for new apps. In fact, the new Access Web Apps, this creation of these new Access Web Apps has already been stopped back in June of 2017, and will shut down the remaining Access Web Apps by April of 2018. So like I said, there is some urgency to this. And if you're still an existing user of Access Web Apps, especially on SharePoint Online, then you need to start coming up with a plan to migrate that. And Microsoft has recommended that you migrate that to PowerApps, which is something that I tested for my Access Web App. And the migration was actually a lot more seamless and better than expected. So that's why I'm sharing this whole content with you. Now, the Access web app that I'm using is actually something that I wrote about 4 years ago. And if some of you following my blogs, you may know about this article or blog that I'd written on Microsoft TechNet Wiki. And it was about the no-code solution to creating and customizing Access web app. This was written, 4 years ago? Yep, it was on January 2nd, 2014. So it's funny because the only thing constant in technology is change. That is a fact. And so something which, like, I even won a TechNet Guru Award on this, was back in January 2014. And if you see in the SharePoint category, I won a third place on this article. And now I'm going to show you how we can migrate that to PowerApps. But before we do that, let's actually take a look at this Access app. So my Access app exists in this SharePoint site collection that I have. And what I'll do is I'll go and actually click on that app, and we'll take a look at it. So this is the app that I created. I call it photography. I'm gonna go and click on that, and it will directly take us to that app. And then we'll walk through the app and just basically see how everything works, and then we'll also migrate that. And that's basically the whole synopsis of this one. Is I'll demonstrate the app to you, not in detail, at least show what the app does. Then we'll migrate the content over to SharePoint. And then after that, we'll look at the SharePoint lists and basically see how the migration has happened. So that'll be basically those things that I'll cover in this video, and then in this section of the blog, and then in the next blog, we'll talk about actually migration and rebuilding that in PowerApps. So when I had built this Access app 4 years ago, I actually made this as a pop-up window. The pop-up window basically just says, please check existing orders for creating new ones to avoid duplicates. There was actually a pop-up window that happened at that time. Now it comes up and says, this site says, nonetheless, this is intentional. Another thing which happens is now you get this little warning over here. It says Access web apps are being retired and will be unavailable by April 2018. Again, that's why there's an urgency to migrate your Access web apps to PowerApps, which is why I'm demonstrating this to you guys. So in my Access web app, I had basically built it to do use for a photography sales company. What it does is it keeps track of these four things: the employees of the company, the products, who are the customers, and then all the orders that have gone out. In the employee section, it basically keeps track of who are the existing employees and if those employees have taken any orders. So right now I just had 5 of these, and it's pretty straightforward. You can go ahead and view each of them over here. You can look at it in a data sheet format, and you can even group them. Grouping is basically if they're on contract, full-time, part-time. That's basically the 3 different sections over here. You can go ahead and add a new employee right here. You can go ahead and delete an existing one. All of this can be done directly in this form section here. Next was about the products. In the products, I only showed all the Nikon one because I'm a Nikon guy who does photography as a hobby. And anytime you click on it, it basically shows you the product name, also the cost and how many units that they have on standby. And if there were any of these that were sold, it shows up in the orders over here. And the orders are basically just pop-up windows. So I selected the order details, and it pops up and says that so many were sold, in that pop-up, I can actually do another pop-up to show a little bit more information about that product as well. So that's that. Again, over here, I can go ahead and add that. I can even go ahead and put in an image over here, and we'll talk more about that image when we get to the SharePoint piece as we're building the PowerApps. And so, so on and so forth. I've got all these different products over here. Same thing in this section as well. They have a datasheet category. You have the datasheet view, and then they have a data. You can categorize it or group it based on, again, the body, flash, and the lens. In the customers, again, pretty much similar as the employees. You have the customer information, and you can see how many orders the customer has put in. And then finally, there is the orders over here. Orders are, again, straightforward. You click on it, and it gives the information about the order over here. So these are the 4 different tables, I would say, in the Access app. These are the customized type of views or the forms that are over here. They all interconnect, and that's basically how the the Access app was built. So now that we have all of this and you viewed it, let's go on with migrating the content over to SharePoint. Now, to do that, Microsoft has actually made things a lot easier for us. If you go up to the settings over here or this gear, there's an option which says export to SharePoint lists. So when I first click on it, it comes up with this message and says that this export operation creates a subsite with a SharePoint list for each table in your Access web app. Basically, what it's saying that you already have this Access web app on a site, and my site collection is called Sites Access 2013. In that site collection, there will be a subsite that's created, and that's where this content will be migrated. And that's basically what it's saying over here. So it says, do you want to continue? And I'll say yes. So while it starts migrating, it comes up with a processing, and it's basically started the migration. Once again, as a reminder, it only migrates the content, which in this case will just be some lists, and with also the images. So what it does is it's now basically come and said that this is going to be your new subsite and that the migration has started. And it's saying that depending on how much of content you have, it can take several minutes. So I'm going to go and click OK. After I did that, it automatically took me to that new subsite. In the subsite, you will basically see that there is it created a subsite called Photography 1, and over there it's basically starting to migrate the content. So if you go to Site Contents over here, you will see that everything is new, which I put together, which it is putting together. But what I like over here is there's this little list which calls as Photography Data Export. And what I like about this list is it's almost as a log. It's collecting logs and it's telling me what's going on. That it's things such as information, where it's creating all the lists over here. It also tells you what is not supported. So let's take a look at that. In the not supported, it's telling me that there are certain calculated column types which could work on the Access web app side, but it's not. It'll not work on the SharePoint side, so it did not migrate that. The other thing that will happen, and we'll show. I'll actually turn on my Outlook web app because I will start getting emails, and I actually get 2 emails. One email is it says that it starts the migration, and the second email is it has completed the migration. So in my Outlook, when it opens up, you'll actually see that the first email should have actually already come through, just saying the same thing, right? That it started the migration. And in the second email, it will actually come and say that the migration has completed. So there was the first email over here. It said that the export has started. And then after that, the second email came through as well, which just says the export has completed. And then it gives me this important information about what was not supported. So we'll take a look at that also in a second over here. So let's go back to that site. This is the new site that we looked at, and site contents. And in the site content, let's take a look at all the new things that have been done. So quick overview. It has, let me back up. So in the Access web app, we saw 4 different sections or 4 different tables. There was the employees, products, customers, and orders. When I go to my new site, I see the same thing. I see customers, employees, orders, and products, but I also see employee details. And employee details did also exist in the Power Apps. So when I go to employees over here, it actually shows me, actually, it's not employee details, it's order details. So when I go to my Access web app and I go to order over here, or orders, there is a section over here which says order details. And in order details, I can go ahead and take a look at the quantity of that which was purchased. Also, it shows me things such as the customer and the employee. These are almost similar to the lookups in SharePoint, because over here I can see customer. When I click on customer, I see all the customer information, which is available in that table there. When I click on employee, I see that employee's information. So these are all basically similar to lookups, and so that's why there was, in the migration, they actually created another whole section called order details, and so we'll take a look at that over here. In order details, what I really liked about the migration was they maintained that lookup which we just saw in Access. So if I go to my list settings over here, you will actually see that not only do I have the number type, columns and everything, but I also have lookups. Exactly the same as the demo. I mean, just I showed you, and I was clicking on the Access web app. Those were lookups that were happening. The same type of lookups happen over here. So in my opinion, the migration was actually very successful because not only did it maintain and give you consistency of the data that came in, but it also maintained the consistency of the relationships between the list. That's why it was able to give you that lookup. That's why I really like, and kudos to the team who came up with this migration plan, because again, like I said, it maintains the consistency. And so whatever was your Access web app table structure, it actually maintains that one-to-one on the SharePoint side as well. So again, when I come back over here, my SharePoint list, we remember that the products and the orders, I mean the products were the lookups. When I click on that, it actually takes me to that lookup item. Same thing for the orders. It takes me to that lookup item over there. So again, migration was fantastic over here. The other things was the employees. That is just a simple list over here, and that came in successfully as well. Another thing I like is it went ahead and migrated its primary ID as well. So this ID over here is the default ID on the SharePoint list side, but it also migrated this ID on the for the original list over there, and this will actually come in really handy when we start relating the two over there. And so the same thing is for the customers and the orders and everything else. But what I want to talk about is the product images. This is a concern that I had, because when I go to my Access web app and I look at the products, I had images which I could upload over here. If you remember, if I add a new item, I can upload that image. And I was a little concerned that is that image going to come through, and it did. So when I go over here to the product images, you can see when I click on it that it actually migrated all the images as well into a photo library on the SharePoint side over here. Another thing that it does is if you go and look at the products, there is also relationship over there on the images as well. See that pictures comes in. Let's take a look at the columns over here. There is a column for pictures or the picture, and that's a hyperlink or a picture type. And this hyperlink is getting URLs directly from that photo library that we got. I cannot press upon the fact that this migration actually is really fantastic because not only again is the content moved, but the relationships is maintained over here. And this really makes the migration from the Access web app to Photoshop, to PowerApps so much more easier. And so basically this was the three things that I want to look at in this video. We looked at the Access web app and basically see how it was built 4 years ago. We went ahead and did the migration using the Expo to SharePoint list. And then after it was all migrated, we actually looked at the alerts that it sends, the 2 email alerts. And that's also we did a deep dive on the construction of the lists, because not only did the lists and the contents get migrated, but also the relationships, which was so well maintained from what was on the Access web app into the SharePoint list. So now in the next video, in the next videos, we'll actually look at how this was built in PowerApps, and how the migration was successful. So stay tuned for that video.